My name is Piotr. I'm a CEO at ClearCode.
And my name is Greg. I'm the head of engineering at ClearCode.
And the ClearCode is actually a software company, software house that wanted to be a bit different. So at some point we decided that we don't want to be generic. We want to have something that will make us feel better. We decided to have an expertise and we choose an AdTech and MarTech, of course. And for the last 15 years, we are designing, building, maintaining AdTech applications for our partners and customers. We are also part of the KingShift, which is like a bigger consortium. And if we would count all the engineers in the group, there would be around 7,000 of us. And you can see some of our logos of our partners that we could share. Not, of course, everyone wants actually to share that we are their technology partner. But I'm sure that for some that aren't here, you already met here on those corridors. So why we do think we understand and we know what we are talking about? Well, we are spending 15,000 hours a month on doing AdTech projects. We started to educate people, and there's a big chance that if you was looking for something AdTech related, our blog was one of the results on the Google. And we've published the AdTech book that for many people is also a starting point for their AdTech journey. We are here to walk you through a dilemma on whether to build, buy, or rent. And maybe to proceed, let's recap. What are those three options are all about?
So the rent option is pretty straightforward. We renting the software as a service. We pay a fee based on actions, based on traffic, whatever the model may be, and we are up and running by filling some fields here and there. The building is a little bit more complicated because we need to know what we want to build, and we need either to build it in-house or have a tech partner to help us out to build the software, and then we just maintain the product. The buy option is maybe the more complicated, but still nonetheless the option. But we are buying the whole company, the whole business with its employees, and we can start incorporating the product that we've bought into our stack.
So at the start, the answer is very simple: rent it. So if you start your journey, if you want to see how the AdTech path will help you to grow your business, rent it. There are many tools, they are already easy to use. You can basically speed up your time to market. You can integrate very easily, and basically for the basic of your problems and challenges, this will be sufficient. You will also learn a lot about your setup, about your challenges. You will understand what works for you, what doesn't. And I do think that basically everyone that wants to go that route should start with a rent option. But of course, this option will have some problems.
The option indeed have some problems. So it's good for start, but when you start to grow, you will see the lack of features that you may need for your growing client base. And because you don't really have the control over the roadmap, because it's a third-party product, you don't have an easy way to get out of this. You may start to see bills that are starting to grow, because the more traffic you have, the more you start paying. The more sophisticated functionalities you need, you will start paying more for it.
You're sharing a lot of your revenue, a lot of your budget.
Yes, and that may become a big problem. And the lack of transparency in that department often is also an issue.
Yeah, so you've rented a solution, you understand your needs. Maybe the solution itself is not good anymore, but probably there are some more sophisticated solutions that you can rent again and adjust. And this also can be tricky. Aside from the rent, we will have buy and build options. And let's try to take the perspective of the company that already understands. Okay, we know what we want, the AdTech path works for us.
We start growing.
We grow, and we started the same journey again. What can we do?
So we still can rent, just better solution, right? It's a solution nonetheless, but it's kind of sweeping the problems under the rug. It's still delaying the same problems that you will have eventually, and maybe if you will solve some of them, like the lack of functionalities, you will need to pay for it. The new functionalities cost. So you will introduce the problem in the other part. So it's still the same issues, just maybe a little bit later.
Just more sophisticated.
More sophisticated issues.
Buying.
Buying seems to be a good option. It seems to solve all of our problems. We have the transparency, we have our own product, we have the influence over the roadmap. We can do pretty much whatever we need. But there still are some caveats that we should keep in mind. We are not buying only the product, we are buying the whole company, the people behind it that may or may not work with us after the acquiring. We still need to incorporate this new product into our current stack, which may be a challenge of itself. So it has additional risks, but it's also an option nonetheless.
The third one, of course, is to build. It has all the pros of the previous solutions and technically not any con. So you have a control over the features, over the roadmap, the transparency, the interface can fit your business cases perfectly. Basically, everything works well, but we will have the biggest problem, right? The time to market and the cost. It needs to cost a lot to build, I don't know, Google Ad Manager, right?
Does it though? Like, let's try to dive deeper into this. So if you are trying to build a next Google Ad Manager, yes, it's probably going to cost a lot and it will be time consuming and it's probably not the best idea in the world. But if you know your audience, you know your clients, you know your goals, the features that you need, you can narrow the scope to like, I don't know, 2, 3, 5% of what a mature solution provides. And you can focus on those that actually gain you money, gain you growth, gain you clients. And you can build this narrowed scope within like 3 to 6 months to start the MVP, start working on production and evaluate what the next steps should be.
We would like to remind you that after those rent part, you precisely know what do you need, what do you don't need, and you can be very efficient with the scope and the definition of it. Plus, of course, it moves the budget from your monthly expenditure into the investment bucket. So instead of renting the technology to run your business, you start to own this technology. So when is the right time? When is wrong?
Where is it? Where it isn't?
Yeah. So the wrong again at the beginning, when you are just starting, learn. When you have very short time to market, rather invest into something that already exists. We haven't mentioned it, but also when there is some business relation on the products you need to build. Like if you want to buy a CDP or have a CDP with a number of integrations that require some business agreements, then probably buying a ready solution could also be an option. You don't need to go that path anymore. But aside of that, I think that
if you're mature, if you know your client base, if you know what you need, and start. When you start adjusting to the tools, that's probably
you should start
the
considering
part where
building one. One thing that is always like a rule of thumb is that if the tool is not helping you, if you are adjusting to the tool, not the tool to you, then maybe it's a good moment to consider. Are there any examples of those paths? There are couples, and exactly this is what Netflix has done. Basically, they have a budget, any budget that they need. And they decided to go with the Microsoft. They've used their solution. They use it to support their ad-supported tiers, subscriptions plans. And basically, after 2 years, maybe after they've seen our presentation, they've decided to go. They decided to go with a build option. And indeed, this is what's happening. So I think they got all the knowledge they needed, and now they are ready to solve the problem, to build. Okay, Netflix is a big one. Do we have anything that is actually a bit more on our target level? Yes, we do. And as I said earlier, we cannot share all the logos, but let's say that this is one of the top 10 e-commerce websites in the world, and they've approached us because they were using very specific set of solutions. They were using Google DB360, Google Campaign Manager, and the Google Studio. And they were very fine to some degree with how it worked, but at some point the difficulties in between communication between those platforms, their business workflow weren't precisely recreated in those platforms. So we started to talk, and at some point we decided that, hey, look, we can basically merge those 3 tools to you into the one. Each of those tools will only have a set of the functionalities, but as a whole will map your business process precisely end to end. You will have a full control over the roadmap, and we can think future-proof on where we are going with it. This is actually what happened. Side note here also, they were also considering building a CDP from scratch, but with the CDP they decided to go by path, just because what I said earlier, the integration were there and they just saved a lot of time to compensate it.
So one more, another example is the mobile game development company that looked for a solution. They were using the ad server, but they were looking for the solution to self-promote the apps between the different games that they publish. And it seemed that either the renting solution was not, the rented options were not enough feature reach to cover their goals. And also, at the same time, the ones that have were very, very expensive. So we figured out to build the DSP with them, to incorporate the campaign management for those specific cross-platform campaigns. And we've incorporated the Softmax multi-arm bandit algorithm for reinforcement learning in order to optimize those. Another example that we have for the mobile inventory, we had the company that have very specific mobile inventory, and they start growing very quickly. They were using the renting solution as well, and they start looking for something to cover their needs in terms of very specialized targeting options, as well as connecting the third-party SSPs into the stack. And we figured that instead of revolutionizing what they have already, we go with the step-by-step approach, and we've built the bidder and incorporated it into the existing stack. And we hope to replace all the other parts as well in time. The project is still ongoing.
This indeed is very smart strategy, because if you have a tech stack that consists of various platforms, you don't need to, when you say now it's time, change everything. You can check, choose some specific pieces of the setup that are not meeting your requirements anymore, and start replacing them gradually. So this is definitely a thing that worked for them.
So what's the key takeaway from this presentation? We talk a lot. What they should get out of here with?
I think that the one that I think is the most important is that the tool is for you, not you for the tool. So if you think that you could do something better, be more efficient, then you should consider doing it with a custom build.
And it's good to have on mind that you don't really need the copy of all the big names in the market. You don't really need 90% of the functionalities they provide, because they need to cover the whole world use cases, and you need to cover your 2-3 use cases that actually allows your business to grow.
And actually, it's not that difficult. We have done it. We've done it for the last. We've been doing it for the last 15 years. We have a lot of experience. We have a lot of use cases. We can walk you through the process of requirements gathering, of those initial addressing those initial thoughts and doubts. Because again, we already gained some of this knowledge, and we are very happy to talk with you about how can we make it happen for you. Not sure how we did it in 15 minutes.
We are quick.
Yeah. So, any questions? Okay.
There is a microphone.
Hello. Are there any case where you will advise to rent, not to buy?
Not to?
To rent and not to buy. When you will advise the company to rent the software?
Again, the renting approach is a very good approach as long as you can find the solutions that are meeting your more and more sophisticated needs. So I would say that again, start with rent and then consider rent as the follow-up. But at some point, you might get to the point in which you will have those problems again. And those problems we mentioned, like lack of the transparency, can't control the roadmap, the generic implementation of the functionalities not necessarily meets your specific business requirements. So this is the moment in which you are considering to maybe go from the rent to something that you have more control over.
But to answer your question, yes, we did tell our clients to go with the rent option more often than we like, because it was the best way to move forward. And our approach is that if we help you out grow your business, at some point you will come back to us to build something, because you will end up with those problems that the rent has. But
it's a very complex and wide environment, and it's very difficult to cover all the cases with a generic solutions. And when we go more towards the performance issues, then it's even more sophisticated depending on specific implementation of some pieces of the ecosystems.
Any additional questions?
Yes.
Hi guys. One.
Can you talk a bit louder?
Doesn't work. Oh, work. Thank you. Guys, maybe a complex question. I understand the ecosystem is very complex, but anyway, maybe you can help. Assume I would like to build in your company as a product, okay? What is the level of magnitude for pricing? I mean, when I say pricing, I mean, for example, I have some simple ad network. For example, I have OTT service and would like to integrate some mid-roll, blah, 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 right? The regular stuff in a tech. What is your level of magnitude for such project to build?
Magnitude, you are talking about the pricing?
Yes. Yeah.
So, I mean,
I understand it's a complex, depends from requirements,
no,
but
of
anyway.
course. So here's the equation I like to always to share. Like, since we are experts, we'll be slightly above the market in terms of the rates, right? You can assume somewhere around 70 to 90 between. And then we want to always deliver something to you in 3 to 6 months. And it will consist of a team of 3 to 6, 9 people, depending on the complexity. So we can do the math basically based on the size of the team, rate, and the duration. The thing is that people that work for us are always, those are people that we grew in the company. In other words, they are not people that we are hiring specifically for a project. So the learning curve is already like we are past that. So even though the rates may seem to be a bit higher at the beginning, the fact that they are talking your language, the fact that they already have the experience, they are basically trying to understand the problem, figure out the solution for you, and they are executing. So this is where you are like saving the nerves, budget, and time.
Thank you.
Hi. So Gregors,
Hey.
hello again. We met yesterday. I kind of explained this. I don't want to put you on the spot about this, but I had a situation where I launched an SSP, and the tech was built in the US for the US market, and I launched it and I launched that SSP in the UK. So we had an issue with GDPR, which doesn't exist, or I guess it still doesn't exist in the US. So we had to make GDPR work on an SSP, a piece of tech that wasn't built for GDPR. And what I realized was that there weren't the people that had the knowledge. I couldn't find the people that had the knowledge to help us fix that issue. And let me tell you, I looked everywhere, from some of the biggest companies like Quantcast and people I knew in Google to, and I spoke with you guys as well. So my question is, whether you're renting or you're buying, how do you troubleshoot the process? Where do you fit into that? Because I realized that, when issues come up, they can completely derail and lose you a lot of money. So yeah, troubleshooting and supporting the tech.
So when you're renting, it's probably easier a little bit, because you are not the only one that is renting, so you can do your research about the tool that you plan to incorporate, and the people are like to share the problems with the paid platforms on the internet. That's very common. But when you're acquiring a business, I think that the best approach would be to find someone that is a third party.
Who can make the
that,
due
that
diligence.
can make the due diligence, that can do the review of the code, of the business side, of everything beforehand. Because once you will acquire the product, you just need to deal with the problems that you bought, right? And there is no really other way around it. But there is, we are not saying that it's not possible to fix your current software, right? But we would need to sit down, look at what you have in your product, and then we can estimate like what amount of work would be required to
Make it
achieve your
GDPR
goals.
compliant.
It seems that making a GDPR compliant, I don't know what you have, so it's very hard to advise you
No,
right
but-
now on the spot, but it seems that it should be doable. So I would be more than happy to dive deeper into the
we are
use
building
case.
projects for the European customers. They need to be GDPR compliant. So the only thing is like what the current setup, what the current implementation lacks of. But ultimately, it's like if it's mandatory for our partners and customers, it's achievable. You can implement it in a way and it will be compliant. So the question is only how much it needs to affect the core of your platform. But I would say it's something that we are doing this is why we are going custom, but if something exists, then make it compatible.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh,
Dwa.
yeah, that,
I tam jest drugie.
that
I'm not sure who was first, sorry.
I'm not sure who was first as well, but
I'm just curious, when you talked about the European e-commerce retailer that had this entire Google stack, are you able to access APIs for those Google products that you can build some custom implementations on top of that?
No, no, no,
You're
no.
already shaking your head no.
No, we are. That's the whole point again, because this is the reason why we also had this presentation. Because very often when we are saying that we are doing custom, the customers are asking us, what CDP are you using? Or what SSP are you using? We are not. We are building them totally from scratch. In this particular question, the implementation will be on top of the Google Ad Exchange. And as a bonus, they will also have an option to integrate with the other exchanges, with their reader. Why? Because, for example, Google does not allow them to advertise alcohol or the other things. So it's not a layer on top of the existing solution. It's a fully custom, tied, built from scratch with a understanding of the performance requirements, issues, a solution that can replace those complex generic ones.
and there was a question behind that.
To be honest, my question was very similar. I was going to ask is, you know, are you building on top of rented solutions, you know, for SaaS businesses where it might make sense for them to rent certain elements from existing software out there and building layers on top? Like, do you see that happening?
Yes. Yeah, very often. So there are, you can do it twofold, right? One type of the solution or to approach is basically to replace. The other is to use something that works and, I don't know, make a self-serve platform for my customer on top of the existing solution so I can somehow limit and manage the inventory, but I'm still relying on the core and the API of the base solution. So for us, the custom means basically whatever is not there and you would like to include into part of your legacy system, we can build it, whether this means replace or build on top.
Thanks.
Okay, any other questions? So thank you everyone
very much.
for joining our our talk.